The city pulsed with a quiet menace beneath the glow of streetlights. Darius Wright could feel it, the hum in the air, the tension just below the surface. It was something you learned to sense after years of walking this earth, in skin that the world always saw as threat before humanity. The Dodge Charger moved smoothly through Oak Ridge Heights, its black frame absorbing the dim light as it coasted along freshly paved roads. The neighborhood was pristine, sterile, a place scrubbed so clean it didn't leave room for anything out of place, especially not two black men in a car with tinted windows. Darius's fingers tapped rhythmically against the wheel, his jaw tense. Isaiah sat beside him, more relaxed on the outside, but his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. Their bodies were trained for danger, alert even in silence. You ever notice how these places all feel the same? Darius said, his voice low. Isaiah didn't look over. Cookie cutter paradise. That's how they like it. Darius gave a bitter laugh. Feels more like camouflage. Neat lawns, quiet nights. Makes it easier to forget who they want to keep out. She bought the house because it felt safe, Isaiah replied. That's what Layla said. Safe for her, maybe. Darius's voice dropped. But you think they see us and think family, neighbors? Isaiah sighed. Let's not do this tonight. Darius didn't argue. The silence fell heavy, broken only by the tires brushing asphalt. They were close to their sister's house now, just a few blocks away. Dinner conversation. A moment to feel normal. But Oak Ridge Heights didn't forget. The moment the cruiser passed them going the opposite way, both men knew. Neither turned to look. They didn't have to. The telltale sound of the U-turn told them everything. Darius's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Isaiah sat up straighter. Right on schedule, Darius muttered. Just drive normal, Isaiah said. No sudden moves, like that ever mattered. The lights flashed behind them, red, blue, commanding. Darius signaled and pulled over with clinical precision, easing the car to the curb like he was defusing a bomb. Their movements were practiced, deliberate. Hands on the wheel. Fingers spread. Eyes forward. They had done this before. The cruiser door opened. Footsteps, flashlight beams swept through the car interior, pausing on their faces longer than necessary. Officer Reeves appeared at the passenger window, wiry, pale, lips tight. License and registration. Darius didn't speak. Isaiah nodded slowly, reaching into the glove compartment with excruciating slowness. It's just the documents, he said evenly. I'm going to hand them to you. Reeves took them without a word. On the other side, Officer Mercer approached, bigger, bulkier. His hand hovered too close to his holster. Where you two headed tonight? Reeves asked. Our sister's place, Isaiah replied. She lives just down the street. We're just having dinner. Reeves didn't acknowledge the response. Mercer's eyes never left Darius. Step out of the car. Darius's breath slowed. Why? Because I said so. Isaiah leaned forward. Officers, with respect. We're military, special forces. Our IDs are right there. There's no threat here. Mercer's mouth curled. Then you shouldn't mind stepping out. It was already spiraling. Darius unlocked the door slowly. He stepped out with his hands visible, body language neutral. Isaiah followed, their stance mirrored. Discipline, upright, still, restrained. But that wasn't what the officers wanted. Turn around. Hands on the hood, Mercer ordered. Darius clenched his jaw. For what? You match the description of suspects. There's been break-ins. Darius let out a bitter laugh. Yeah? What's that description? Black and breathing. Hands on the car. Isaiah stepped between them slightly. Let's just cooperate. Please. He placed his hands on the car first. Darius followed, reluctantly. Mercer's search was aggressive, rough. It wasn't about protocol, it was about provocation. Spread your legs wider, he barked. Darius did, but only slightly. You got a problem. Mercer asked, voice closer now. Yeah, Darius replied. My problem is getting treated like a criminal on my way to dinner. Mercer gripped his arm harder. Die, Isaiah started, warning in his voice. Mercer leaned in. Listen to your brother, boy. That word. Everything shifted. Darius's head snapped toward Mercer, rage flaring in his eyes. Isaiah moved instantly, placing his shoulder against Darius's to stop him from turning further. Not now. Not here. Darius's fists curled. His breathing was hard, fast. Mercer smiled. You want to go, he whispered. I said back off. Darius shouted. That was it. The shout became resistance. The resistance became a threat, and the threat gave them what they needed. He's reaching, Mercer yelled. A gun was drawn. Isaiah turned, arms wide. No, he's not. The shot cracked. Time shattered. Darius's body jerked. The breath left him in a harsh gasp. Blood bloomed through his shirt. His knees buckled. He hit the pavement. Isaiah screamed. He lunged, but a taser dropped him before he could reach his brother. Electricity flooded his limbs, stole his breath. He hit the ground hard, cheek scraping asphalt. Stay down, Reeves barked, drawing his weapon. He's unarmed. Isaiah shouted, barely able to speak. But none of it mattered. Officer down. Mercer yelled into the radio, panting. Isaiah turned his head. Darius lay on the pavement, eyes fluttering, mouth open, gasping. Blood pooled beneath him. Isaiah crawled forward, pain lancing through his body. Die, stay with me, man. Darius's fingers twitched. His eyes locked on Isaiah. Don't let them get away with this. Then he stopped moving. Everything went quiet. Isaiah barely heard the shouting, barely felt the knee slammed into his spine. The cuffs bit into his wrists, but nothing registered. His eyes stayed fixed on Darius, on his twin. Gone. They shoved him into the squad car, slammed the door. Through the window, he saw Darius's body being surrounded by blue and red. One officer stood over him, gun still drawn, still afraid, still lying. Isaiah's breathing slowed. His jaw clenched. His eyes burned. He didn't scream anymore. He just watched, memorizing everything. The rain came down like a confession. They buried Darius 3 days later. The sky was gray and low, as if it too mourned the truth that refused to stay buried. A sea of black coats and tear-stained faces surrounded the Wright family plot. The flag that had once flown proudly over Darius's coffin was folded now, clutched tightly in the hands of Layla Wright, their sister, who stood at the head of the casket with her spine stiff and voice unwavering. My brother gave everything to this country, she said, her words slicing through the silence. He served with honor. He came home to be killed in the street by men who saw a threat instead of a human being. He deserved better. We all do. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, but none of it brought Darius back. No speech, no silence, no justice. Isaiah was not there. He'd been released from jail the night before under intense pressure from military legal support and a few sympathetic city council members. They said the body cam footage was lost in a technical malfunction. They said Mercer feared for his life. They said Isaiah had resisted. They said a lot of things, but Isaiah said nothing. He vanished after his release. Layla tried to find him. She called every number, sent every message, even used old contacts from her legal circles. But Isaiah left no trace. For Layla, it was a race against time. She knew what Darius's death would be turned into. A media narrative, a justification. She saw it in the way the news anchors reported the incident. Another tragic confrontation. Officer involved. Suspect had a prior military background. All code for, he was dangerous. They were afraid. She filed civil complaints, held press conferences, stood before flashing cameras with trembling voices. She demanded the footage, demanded accountability. But no one listened long enough. Until it happened. 2 weeks after the funeral, Officer Mercer was found slumped against his cruiser behind a dive bar. Conscious, breathing, but paralyzed from the chest down. There were no witnesses, no camera footage, no signs of forced entry or struggle. Only a single line scrolled in black ink across the back window of his squad car. One down. The city erupted. Was it a gang hit? Was it retaliation? Is law enforcement under threat? No one spoke Darius's name, but Layla knew. She saw the reports, saw the silence in Mercer's hospital room, the fear in the eyes of officers as they guarded his bed. Whatever had happened to him hadn't just taken his movement, it had taken his certainty. Someone had made him feel what he'd never felt before, powerless. She sat in her office late into the night after that news broke, staring at the stack of legal documents that now felt irrelevant. She thought about Isaiah. The way his jaw had clenched in the holding cell. The way his eyes had burned not with grief, but with something colder. She whispered his name to the darkness. Not as a question, as a confirmation. 300 miles away, Isaiah Wright knelt in a basement lit only by the glow of a single lamp. The walls were bare. A laptop sat on a folding table. A stack of printed case files rested beside it. Internal affairs complaints, badge numbers, witness statements, suppression orders. Every page traced a pattern leading back to a rot embedded deep in the department. He had spent the last 2 weeks digging. The officer who signed off on Reeves's cleared record, suspended for falsified statements 5 years earlier. The precinct captain, sued for brutality in 2009, settled out of court, record sealed. The DA, closed ties to the police union. The truth was there, buried beneath silence and bureaucracy. And Isaiah had spent years in war zones learning how to kill quietly. Now he applied those same tactics to another battlefield. He stared at the name circled in red ink, Officer Reeves. The man who held the flashlight. The man who stood silent when Darius died. His time was coming. Layla stood in the city council chamber 3 days later, surrounded by reporters. We have asked repeatedly for the body cam footage. We've requested a federal investigation. And we've received nothing but silence. My brother's death is not an isolated incident. It is part of a pattern, a system designed to protect itself at the expense of our lives. She stepped down from the podium. A dozen microphones shoved toward her. Miss Wright, any comment on the officer found injured? Do you believe this was connected to your brother's case? Is your family involved? She paused, her eyes hard. My family has already paid enough. Reeves lived alone in a 2-bedroom home on the outskirts of the city. Quiet street. Standard layout. No cameras. No dog. Isaiah had been watching him for 4 days. He knew Reeves's schedule. Knew where he stopped for coffee. Knew what time he went to bed. Knew he kept his sidearm in the drawer beside his bed. But only after 10 o'clock p.m. at 2:13 a.m., Isaiah entered through the back. Reeves woke to the sound of his bedroom door creaking open. He reached for the drawer. The gun was already gone. Isaiah stood at the foot of the bed, cloaked in black, his voice low. Remember me? Reeves's mouth opened. No words came. Isaiah stepped forward. You held the flashlight. You watched him die. Please, Reeves gasped. I didn't shoot. I didn't. But you didn't stop it. Reeves lunged forward. He never made it. Isaiah moved fast, precise. A sharp strike, a needle-point jab to the pressure point at the base of the neck. He didn't want to kill him. He wanted him to live, just not on his feet. Reeves collapsed, paralyzed. Isaiah stood over him as Reeves struggled to move. That's how he felt, Isaiah whispered. Pinned, breathless, alone. He left the house without a trace. 2 days later, the story broke. Another officer down. Another body intact but broken. 2 men. 2 messages. 1 ghost. The media frenzy exploded. Conspiracy theories. Cop killer headlines. The mayor declared a state of emergency. The police chief promised retribution. Still, Isaiah's name never surfaced, because no one could prove it, except Leila. She stood in her apartment, staring at the screen. Her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She answered. A silence, then a voice. "I'm sorry." She froze. "Isaiah. I couldn't let them get away with it." "Where are you?" she whispered. "I'm not calling for that. I just wanted you to know, it's not over." She could hear the weight in his voice. "You're not alone," she said. "You don't have to do this alone." His breath caught. "I already am." Then the line went dead. Layla stood there, holding the phone to her chest. And outside, the storm finally broke. The city didn't sleep anymore. Not really. Not since Mercer and Reeves had fallen. Police lights haunted every block. Their flashing sirens no longer symbols of safety, but of paranoia. Officers rolled in packs now, doubled up, jumpy and wired, their fingers twitching closer to their holsters at every shadow. The word on the street was simple. There's a ghost out there, and he's hunting cops. What they didn't know was that he wasn't a ghost. He was a man with a code, a man with fire in his veins and memory burned behind his eyes. Isaiah Wright moved like smoke through the underbelly of the city, drawn to the rot like a moth to flame. Every step he took, every lead he followed brought him closer to the core. The men who covered up Darius's death, the ones who buried truth in red tape and courtroom loopholes. The problem wasn't just two officers. It was the system that protected them. And Isaiah was done playing by its rules. It started with a list. Printed pages pinned to a board in a boarded-up loft downtown. Faces, names, titles. Red string connecting files like arteries through a body of corruption. At the center of it all, Deputy Chief Victor Sawyer. The man who signed off on the altered incident report. The man who appeared at every press conference, eyes wet with manufactured grief. The man who said Isaiah was a suspect. Sawyer didn't just protect the guilty. He trained them. Layla knew something was coming. She could feel it in the tension rising across the city. Every morning brought a new headline. Every evening a new rumor. A task force was formed. A reward announced. And still no leads. No trail. Because Isaiah left nothing behind. But Layla remembered the voice on the phone. The weariness. The pain. The promise. She started visiting families. Names she recognized from Isaiah's file. Men and women who had filed complaints against the department and been ignored. She found one in particular, Darren Cole. A man who had once been beaten unconscious by a group of plainclothes officers for matching a description. The complaint had disappeared, but Layla found him in a nursing home. In a wheelchair. "I did remember their names," Darren whispered. "But I'll never forget their faces." Sawyer was one of them. Layla's blood turned cold. It wasn't just Darius. It was never just Darius. Isaiah waited outside Sawyer's estate for 3 nights. It was the kind of place that screamed security. Gated. Floodlit. With a private drive and motion sensors. But Isaiah had been trained to infiltrate compounds tougher than this. He had once slipped through a Taliban stronghold with only a combat knife and night vision. This was routine. On the 4th night, he slipped through the fence's blind spot. 38 seconds later, he was inside the guest house, hidden behind a shed, watching Sawyer sip bourbon on the back porch like a man without a worry in the world. Isaiah almost admired that. The audacity to drink and laugh while blood was still drying on his department's hands. He didn't attack that night. He waited. He wanted Sawyer to know first. To feel what Isaiah felt when he heard Darius's last breath. So the message came the next morning. Sawyer found a photo of Mercer taped to his front door. The words written in red ink. "You're next." Sawyer called in every favor he had. Security doubled. State police contacted. But Isaiah was already inside. Already watching. Layla walked into her office and found an envelope on her desk. No stamp. No name. Inside, a flash drive. She plugged it into her laptop with trembling fingers. The video was grainy, silent. Body cam footage. It showed Darius's hands on the wheel. Isaiah's calm voice. The flashlight. The command to step out. The silence before the shot. And then the lie. He reached. Layla covered her mouth. Tears slid down her cheeks. She opened a new email. To every major news network. Subject. Urgent. Body cam footage recovered. She hit send. It went viral in 30 minutes. The city erupted in protest. Thousands poured into the streets, chanting Darius's name. Candlelight vigils turned to marches. Marches turned to occupations. The mayor begged for calm. The chief of police resigned. But the system didn't fall. Sawyer remained, smiling, untouchable, until Isaiah made his move. It happened at dawn. Sawyer's security detail was switching shifts, half asleep, complacent. A power grid surge blacked out the entire state for 90 seconds. In those 90 seconds, Isaiah moved. By the time the lights came back, Sawyer was gone. The city panicked. A manhunt began. But Isaiah didn't run far. He had Sawyer locked in an abandoned courthouse on the south side. The same courthouse where Leela had once tried to file Darius's wrongful death suit and been turned away. Poetic justice. Sawyer was tied to a chair, duct tape over his mouth. A single camera pointed at his face, a recording light blinking. Isaiah stepped into the frame. "This man trained killers," he said, his voice even. "He buried the truth. He turned justice into a business. Tonight, he answers to someone else." He ripped the tape off. Sawyer gasped. "You'll never make it out of this." "I already did," Isaiah replied. "He didn't kill him. He did worse. He left Sawyer alive. Broken. Paralyzed. Silent. A message. The footage hit the web hours later. No face shown. Just the words. The system failed. We didn't. Layla watched it unfold on TV. She didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She just whispered one word. Isaiah. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, he heard her. And he kept moving. Because the war wasn't over yet. Isaiah disappeared. Not in the way the police claimed. Not as a fugitive in the wind. But with the precision of a man who had trained his entire life to become invisible. His face was never captured. His name never spoken aloud. But the damage was undeniable. The empire of silence that once protected the city's corrupt officers was crumbling. And those at the top knew exactly who to blame. They called it terrorism, retaliation, an assault on law and order. But beneath the outrage, there was fear. Fear that someone was out there, exposing the truth and doing what the system had failed to do, hold its monsters accountable. A task force was launched. Federal. Ruthless. Spearheaded by Special Agent Callum Reed. A man known for cracking down on domestic threats with military efficiency. He didn't care about nuance. He cared about control. And Isaiah Wright was officially declared public enemy number 1. The press conference came the next morning. Agent Reed stood behind a podium, flanked by city officials and interim police brass. Layla watched from her office. The sound turned low, her jaw clenched. "We are dealing with an extremist threat," Reed said, voice flat. "This man is not a vigilant. He is a criminal. He is a danger to this city." He flipped the photo onto the screen behind him. Isaiah's military ID. Leela's breath hitched. They knew. She reached for her phone, hands trembling. Dialed. Straight to voicemail. "Isaiah," she whispered. "They're coming." Isaiah stood in a hardware store in a town 3 counties south, picking out copper wire and signal blockers. His burner phone vibrated once. Layla's number. He didn't answer. He had work to do. He'd mapped the city's surveillance infrastructure. Knew the blind spots. Knew the underground tunnels beneath the courthouse. Knew how to vanish before they ever got close. But they were closer now. Reed's men swept the city like a disease. Doors kicked in. Phones tapped. Anyone with ties to Darius or Leela was questioned. Intimidated. Watched. Leela couldn't walk down the street without eyes following her. She showed up to court and found reporters waiting. Protesters chanting. The system wasn't just hunting Isaiah. It was sending a message to anyone who dared to care. Isaiah watched from a rooftop as they raided his old apartment. 10 men. Full armor. Guns raised. He smiled. It was already empty. He was living in the spaces between their steps now. In the cracks of their assumptions. He wasn't fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for legacy. And he wasn't done. Leila knew he'd reach out eventually. And when he did, it wasn't a call. It was a package. No name. No return address. Just a flash drive and a note. They don't fear the law. Make them fear the truth. The drive contained footage. Hidden recordings. Testimonies. Cop after cop bragging in locker rooms. Texts between officers exchanging racist memes. Emails between Sawyer and the DA planning to bury body cam footage. It was a bomb. Layla spent all night uploading it. The next morning, it dropped. The fallout was instant. Protests surged. The mayor's office was flooded with calls. National news descended. A congressional hearing was proposed. And Reed doubled down. He issued a warrant for Leela. Obstruction of justice. She was arrested on the steps of the courthouse. Isaiah watched it live. He didn't break the screen. He broke the table. She had stood beside him, even in silence. She had fought the war in the daylight while he waged it in the dark. They had come for her. That meant it was time. He suited up. The black jacket, the gloves, the silence. But this time, he wasn't going after a cop. He was going after Reed. Layla sat in an interrogation room for 12 hours. No food, no phone call, just questions. Do you know where he is? How long have you been helping him? How many more are going to fall? She didn't answer. Not once. Reed entered the room at hour 13. He didn't yell. He sat across from her and smiled. You think this is justice? She met his gaze. Calm. Cold. Numb. I think this is fear. And you're choking on it. He leaned in. You're going to lose. She leaned closer. You already have. 10 minutes later, the power went out. Every light in the building blinked off. Backup generators failed. Doors locked. And Isaiah Wright walked into federal custody. The power outage lasted only 43 seconds, but in that time, the security grid at the federal building collapsed. Doors sealed. Emergency lights failed to activate. Communication channels went dead. And somewhere in the maze of darkness, Isaiah Wright moved like a phantom. He knew the layout. Had memorized blueprints during his final years in Delta Force, when they trained to breach compounds with minimal casualties. But tonight, there were no teammates. No mission objectives. Just one goal: get Layla out and send the world a message. Reed never saw it coming. When the lights returned, Isaiah stood in the hallway outside the interrogation room, fully geared, voice low through the comms he'd patched into Reed's own surveillance line. You have one chance. Let her go. Reed froze in front of the monitors. Where is he? Isaiah's voice was cold. You'll know when I'm close because you won't hear anything at all. By the time the agents converged on the room, Layla was gone. The camera showed only an empty chair, the cuffs dangling from the table like discarded restraints. On the wall, written in black marker, you never controlled the narrative. You just lied loud enough to believe it. Reed's face twisted. This wasn't just a manhunt anymore. This was war. They emerged onto the street just before dawn. Layla's face was pale, but her voice steady. Where are we going? Isaiah checked the alley. Somewhere they won't follow. She gripped his arm. You're going to kill him, aren't you? Isaiah didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Layla stepped in front of him, Don't. That's what he wants, to turn you into the monster. I already am, he said. And monsters scare people into telling the truth. They vanished into the maze of the underground. News broke before breakfast. Federal prisoner escapes with suspected cop killer. Anchors stumbled over words like terrorist, vigilant, traitor. Social media split in half. Some called Isaiah a hero. Others wanted his head. But what none of them saw coming was what happened at noon. Every major network cut to a live stream. A masked man standing in front of an American flag. Isaiah. His voice was distorted but unmistakably human. This country taught me how to kill, how to move without being seen, how to execute a target in the name of justice. Now I'm teaching you what justice actually looks like. He stepped aside. Behind him, a screen flickered to life. Clip after clip played. Officers laughing about chokeholds. Texts mocking Darius's death. Internal memos detailing how to silence Leela. Footage of Sawyer's training seminars, teaching aggression, not de-escalation. Layla appeared next. She didn't wear a mask. My name is Leela Wright. You already know my brother's name. You already know how he died. You just didn't want to believe it. But now you don't have the luxury of denial. She stared into the lens. This is not about revenge. It's about reckoning. The stream ended with a single message. We don't forget. We don't forgive. We fight. Chaos followed. City Hall was surrounded. Federal buildings were shut down. The Justice Department scrambled to issue statements. Police officers began resigning. Anonymous officers sent in letters, some apologizing, some begging for forgiveness, some terrified. Reed retreated to a private compound. His press briefings stopped. He knew Isaiah was coming. He just didn't know when. Leela and Isaiah found refuge in a safe house outside city limits. Old contacts, former soldiers, people who owed Darius. They stayed long enough to rest, to plan, to breathe. Layla sat beside him in the quiet hours of early morning. You can still walk away. He didn't look at her. I don't walk away. That's why I'm still breathing. And if you die? He turned then. I die knowing I didn't let them bury Darius with a lie. The trap was set 2 nights later. Reed's convoy moved at midnight. Bulletproof SUVs, armed escorts. They headed to a federal airstrip outside the city. Rumors said he was fleeing, pulling strings in DC to disappear. But Isaiah was already there. He disabled the lead car with an EMP. The tail car crashed seconds later. Smoke filled the air. Isaiah appeared through the haze. The bodyguards aimed. He dropped them before they fired. Only Reed remained, trapped in the back seat. Isaiah opened the door. Reed stared up at him, breathing hard. You think this makes you a hero? He spat. No, Isaiah said. It makes me an ending. He raised the gun. Layla's voice crackled through his earpiece. Isaiah, don't. Please. He closed his eyes, lowered the weapon, and spoke into the silence. You're going to prison. For everything. Reed was delivered to the front steps of the courthouse. Handcuffed. Bleeding. Terrified. A flash drive taped to his chest with every crime detailed. He was arrested without incident. The world watched. And for once, it didn't look away. It didn't end with the headlines. It didn't end with Reed in handcuffs. It didn't end at all. Because truth doesn't end. It ripples. The footage Isaiah and Layla released made its way into courtrooms across the country. Civil rights attorneys reopened dozens of cases, some decades old. Wrongfully imprisoned black men walked free. Judges stepped down. Police chiefs were forced to resign. And in the middle of it all stood the name Darius Wright. Darius, who had only wanted to visit his sister. Darius, whose name became a movement. Layla stood on the steps of the federal courthouse, reporters circling her like vultures. What happens next, Miss Wright? One asked. She paused, scanning the crowd. Her voice, when it came, was calm but piercing. We keep going. She didn't speak of revenge. She spoke of reform, of policy, of accountability, of rebuilding a justice system that had never been just for people who looked like Darius. Isaiah watched it all from the shadows. He couldn't stay. It was too dangerous now. Too wanted. His face haunted FBI whiteboards. His name triggered airport red flags. He'd become a ghost. But even ghosts could leave echoes. He sent Layla one final message. Untraceable. Encrypted. You made sure they remembered his name. I made sure they feared forgetting it. I'm proud of you. She read it in silence, then deleted it and smiled. Months passed. Seasons changed. The fire of protests cooled into the steady burn of legal action. Victims found their voices. Coalitions grew. Layla published a book. The system is working as designed. It hit bestseller lists within days. Isaiah's story became legend. A cautionary tale to some, a hero's tale to others. No one ever found him. But sometimes, in a quiet street corner protest in St. Louis, or a courthouse march in Atlanta, someone would spot a man in a hood. Silent. Watching. Nodding once before vanishing. They never approached. They never needed to. They knew who he was. On the anniversary of Darius's death, Layla stood at his grave. A modest headstone. Fresh flowers. The words carved deep. Beloved brother, never forgotten. She knelt and closed her eyes. The breeze whispered through the trees. A figure stood nearby. Distant but present. Isaiah. He didn't speak. He didn't stay. But she felt it. And that was enough. Justice had taken a piece of him, but it had given the world something more. A truth that could no longer be denied. A promise that would never fade. A legacy.